Hi, Daniel.
Hello.
Happy Thursday. Well, Thursday when we're recording.
I nearly said Happy Easter then.
Well, it is Easter this weekend. It
Easter.
won't be for people when they're listening to this, but hope you had a lovely Easter.
Yeah. Chocolate.
Today's topic.
Go on then.
How to market when times get tough without slashing budget on everything.
Music to my ears.
So when we hit like economic downturns, things like recessions, economic difficulties, a lot of brands, as you will see and as you'll have seen in the past, their automatic response is to cut marketing.
Yeah.
Cut marketing spend, cut marketing budget, cut marketing departments.
Yes. Marketing is the first to be looked at.
Every single time.
It is. And obviously we feel the brunt of that. And our clients do.
Yeah. And it's understandable. Like, you know, if your business is going through hard times, it feels like an obvious area that you can cut costs quickly and that you can downscale quickly.
But wouldn't it be great?
But there is a serious misconception that then when things get better, you can just put that money back in, it all goes back to where it was.
Not true.
And it is not the case.
Nope.
There may be the odd exception to that, but I've never seen that be the case where you can just turn it off and on. And a lot of people think marketing is that, a button that you can just turn it on when you need it, turn it off when you want to save a bit of cash.
I think channels like paid media are at fault in theory for that that mindset. I also think, as we all know, we've become humans and consumers that just want everything instantly. So it's instant both ways. Instant turn off and then instant turn back on.
Yeah.
And it just is absolutely not the case.
Yeah. There's also been a report that we've been talking about internally that Google have just released. So it's called Google's Effectiveness Equation Report. And it's really interesting. Like, if you've not had a chance to download it and have a read, like, seriously do.
It's free.
We'll stick the link to it in the comments of the podcast, or the description, sorry. But it is very insightful, and there's a lot of very important facts that brands and businesses need to be aware of. And a lot of it's around, if you choose in hard times, which, you know, it might be the only choice you've got to make, to cut that marketing spend, to bring all your marketing activity right back and cut it back, the length of time it then takes to get back to where you were is mad.
Yeah.
And there's some really interesting data on it.
Yeah, so the report that I found most interesting in the report is just how much is in there that is of value and of interest, but it's backed by data. Yeah. Surveys, research. Tons of brands have been researched and part of those surveys. So it's not Google. It doesn't feel like it's Google bringing out a report just for themselves, which obviously almost, if you're not watching this, I think I rolled my eyes there when I'm talking about Google, because quite often, as we say, Google are in it for Google.
Of course they are.
But the report is, for me as well, and I think me and Lee talked about this on a previous episode, say a month or two ago, WARC also brought out an amazing report that actually sings off completely the same hymn sheet as this one. So it's great that then you get Google coming out, who are obviously Google, and they're backing up the same narrative, which is a few different angles, really. And you're absolutely right to mention about marketing in uncertain times, and it's probably worth mentioning, obviously, with us saying Happy Easter to people at the start, where a couple of weeks in from Trump and his tariffs.
Yeah, and I think we're only really now starting to see how that's affecting brands, like literally in the last...
Well, mention who we talked about this morning.
Passenger. Yeah, Passenger cutting their US activities. That's huge for them. Huge. They're a brand that we've kind of just are a little bit in love with, so we look at them a lot.
We love you, Passenger.
So that I felt like that felt like a very big announcement. That felt like something very major. And
they directly attributed that to the tariffs. So,
and it's there's a long list of brands in it, and there was a few that sort of had like immediate repercussions and immediate announcements. But then I think we're now getting to the point where they've had time to settle on it. They've had time to see what the final sort of score is, and now brands are having to make that big decision.
Yeah.
And that's now really starting to come in.
Doesn't it feel like exactly how you've just described it there is exactly like when the pandemic hit? That immediate stop everything, and then you sort of try and ride the wave. Those who are, I'm saying this in inverted commas for anyone who's not watching, those brands who are brave. Now, I'd rather us not be talking about marketing and continue to invest in marketing as a brave thing to do, because I'd rather that's where I feel like this whole narrative of like, switch marketing off and then switch it back on again. I almost wish for marketing to not, and it shouldn't be, in those types of conversations. We shouldn't be describing it as brave to carry on marketing.
That should be standard.
Exactly that. And that's the thing of like marketing being seen not as an investment still.
Yeah.
It's the wrong mindset and the wrong approach. But I think lots of people are to blame, including marketing, but other departments have been to blame with that inherent, I'm going to call it taboo. Taboo's the wrong word, but that mindset shift away from marketing is a cost, let's turn it off when times are hard, tariffs, Trump, uncertainty, pandemic, all that sort of stuff that we've cost of living crisis. How long have we been in the cost of living crisis for as well?
I think how it should be really is, so something happens, and whether it's within the business or whether it's within the wider world, as like we've talked about, the wider economic landscape, then the standard thing to do should just be to keep things where they are.
Yeah.
Keep marketing the same budgets that you've had, the same activity you've had, keep that going. Okay, keep that nice, steady, sort of like bottom line going. Brave should be then to invest more money.
Yeah.
Brave shouldn't be to keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Brave should be to be like, right, okay, so we're not in a great place as a business, we're not in a great place as a country or as a world or economically, we're going to sink a load more money into our marketing efforts. That's a brave move.
Yeah.
Stupid is to cut it all back.
Yeah, I agree. Brave, that's a great way of thinking about brave, because there's acknowledgement of the times that we're in, like when there's a lot of uncertainty economically with, like we've mentioned, Trump's tariffs, hokey cokey that he put us all through. We saw that in our clients and new biz conversations that they'd suddenly, let's call it, slowed down, and there was a lot of sort of almost a feeling from both sides of are we all on eggshells here because we don't know what we don't know, and it's that uncertainty. We totally empathise with that. Like, we get it.
100%, because it affects, it's affecting everybody. It's affecting us as a business.
But I love how you're thinking of what would be deemed as brave as actually being.
It's just carrying on.
It's
like
further.
If you flipped it in a different way, and you said, right, everything's gone a bit to shit. We're just going to carry on with business. We're going to carry on, trucking through, and we're not going to let anybody go. Nobody would look at you as a business and go, oh, that's brave. They're not getting rid of anybody.
Yeah.
But if you as a business went, right, we're going to invest money in more people and bring in more experts in the business and bring in more, more, basically up our head count. People are like, oh God, that is brave. Yeah. That's really brave. Yeah. It's the same thing.
Well, yeah, it is. Yeah. It's often that thing of like marketing budgets and or headcount as seen as we keep saying, like seen as first on the chopping block. I actually read this morning that I think it was a study by, can't remember who, maybe IPA Bellwether, that I think it might be on a quarterly basis, so forgive me if this is slightly wrong, but the message of this, or the findings of this study, were that marketing budgets for the first time in 4 years have dropped in the, I'm saying in the last quarter, I might be wrong there, but over the last 4 years, they've obviously coming out of the pandemic, and obviously as we've talked about, pandemic saw budgets absolutely slashed and dropped.
So that rise
makes sense as it's recovery out of pandemic, but the message from this, the findings from this study were the most recent, whatever time period, say quarterly, was the first time in 4 years that marketing budgets collectively have dropped. Now, the future forecast is still positive, but that perfectly mirrors what we're talking about here, that they've actually seen budgets. So the reality of it is uncertainty hits and budgets, in reality, because there's a study that we're referencing there, have dropped. We're also seeing that with our clients. Some of our clients, not all of them, and out in our new biz conversations, where I think things would have progressed maybe a little bit further. We'd have had commitment from a couple of conversations that have clearly stalled because of that.
And do you know what? It's actually not even related to performance.
No.
There doesn't seem to be, when these things happen, there's no correlation between, do you know what, marketing is doing so well for us.
Yeah, completely.
It seems completely irrelevant. Like, the performance could be the best it's ever been.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't matter. It doesn't seem to play into the costing exercise at that point. In the same way, like we've seen it with clients in the past where their performance could be the best it's ever been. They're literally up and up and up and up and up, and that, actually our marketing budget's being cut.
Yeah.
And it's a real blow at that point, and that does not make sense.
No.
And especially if that marketing activity, the performance isn't just good, it's actually, driving business.
Yeah. This is where, like I said a couple of minutes ago, I think the marketing is a cost and not an investment mindset and narrative. I think a few people, including marketers, are to blame for that. 'Cause I was thinking when you were talking there, like, imagine like you're running a business and you are faced with like making cuts.
Yep.
And we've talked about the fact that marketing is like the first one on the chopping block. Like, I can picture myself. I've been in situations before, being at Flaunt, where times have been tough, and marketing and product people are the ones who are like sat down and almost made aware of the situation before anyone else. And I was thinking, like, compare it to a HR function, for example. I can hear in my experience when shit hits the fan and there's uncertainty, I can almost hear my previous bosses and the mindset of the people who are making the decisions about potential layoffs and redundancies, of saying, for example, just using HR because I mentioned it, oh, we need HR. Yeah. Why isn't it not, and we need marketing?
Yeah.
That's the need and the necessity.
Because it's also one of the things that people invest in last.
Yeah.
Like, they get to a point with a business and they're like, right, the business is good now, so let's now market it.
Yeah.
But it quite often comes like really far down the line.
Why is it not the other way?
Baffles me.
Yeah. So for me, there's a few things. Obviously, we're talking about in uncertain times. Certainly, at least clinging on, i.e., carrying on what you're doing. But the report itself, and as I said, as we've said, like, the report is a what's the word, a mishmash, what's the word I'm trying to think, like, it's a compilation basically of loads of different research and studies, and it's all around that word effectiveness. And this is where I go back to who's been responsible for that the wrong narrative, let's call it, i.e. marketing is a cost, not an investment. And I think marketers are to blame as well as others for that, or responsible for that.
Yeah.
I think effectiveness is the crux of it for me, where Google's report really adds some serious value for where marketers need to be thinking holistically about marketing, it needs to be less so channel by channel, tactic by tactic, and it needs to be collective input for output from the business's perspective, and ultimately all around effectiveness of marketing, holistic effectiveness of marketing. And drilling down, and we've talked about this before on other episodes, but it's further backed up in this report. Brand building as as performance, because what happens is, forget if your budget hasn't been slashed. If your budget is being retained in a time of uncertainty, there are so many people who shit themselves and go, right, that budget is going into performance marketing. Forget brand.
Yeah.
Forget brand right now, because shit's hit the fan.
We need sales.
Short term. Return on investment. All those mindsets that are fueled by panic, I understand. It's like you were saying about where brave needs to be.
But then who comes out on top? It's the fucking businesses with strong brands.
There you go.
Every single time.
Pandemic was proof of it. Loads of research.
But people still don't see it. They still don't believe it.
No, and I think one of the stats in it that is amazing to think about is switching off your marketing, or seriously pulling back on your marketing. For every £1 that has been saved, let's call it, so cut back. So for every £1 saved, to reinvest then in the future, when you've maybe got a little bit more confidence, you need to reinvest £1.40 for every £1 you saved initially.
Fucking hell.
So £1.40 reinvestment to regain to get to the place where you were, where you've saved £1, the equivalent. That is the best way. The commercialisation of that is the best way, and almost like a frightening way, but in a good way.
It is.
Think about commercially what you're about to do if you say stop your marketing.
Basically, all you do at that point, you're not actually saving money.
Well, I mean, clearly you're not.
You're just deferring your cost.
Yeah.
And it's just going to cost you more in the future.
But how many people can't think about the future in those moments because of shit's hit the fan?
And it must be so hard. Like, I'm not a business owner. I've not been in that position where I have to make that big decision around where are we going to cut costs? Where are we? But the way that decision is made at the moment, I don't actually think doesn't take into account the opinion of the people within the marketing department. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah.
So I can't remember what the stat was in this doc, but it said something like only 20% of marketers think that other people outside the business understand the effectiveness of marketing, which is quite scary.
Well, it is, but I get that.
Yeah, I get that.
I'd be really interested to know how many marketers know, like how confident they are in their own reporting of effectiveness. Truly believing the effectiveness of their holistic efforts for marketing, because that's what we need to be talking about. And that, again, we've talked about brand a couple of times, but there's some really, really interesting stats. Yet again, I know I mentioned a little while ago the WARC report that came out, where it was essentially saying that brand is a multiplier of performance marketing and the other way around. So it's not even brand or performance marketing, or it's brand and it's literally brand times performance investment as well. So yet again, the Google report that we were talking about is there to back that up. There's more data in it. So again, there's a load of insight there that further props up the strength of a brand. And I've talked about this on previous episodes, and I've posted about this on LinkedIn, and I think from memory it was a stat about building a strong brand allows you to reduce the price elasticity of your consumers, i.e. price sensitivity of your consumers, i.e. you can charge more with a stronger brand. I mean, it sounds obvious, but if you're neglecting brand investment, especially at times that we're talking about the uncertainty. We've talked about that reinvestment of £1.40 for every £1 that you saved in initially. Like you're saying, you're just deferring cost in the future. If you're pulling back on brand, you're also starving yourself of the possibility to
Of what you
also
could get
charge
from
more.
performance, yeah.
Profitability,
Yeah.
bottom line, it's staring you in the face there as well. And brand is just the first place, as well as a sort of marketing as a whole. Brand investment when times are hard, and also I'm going to flag, also when times aren't hard.
Yeah.
Brand is just severely under invested across the board because it is just promotion led, short term ROI. ROI is a metric that I wish we could ban. Full stop. Because it just drives the wrong.
But what's the one that every single board asks for?
It's just
Every CFO asks for.
Yeah. Obviously, we've talked about this, but the reason why we've talked about it and we're talking about it again is it hasn't gone away. There is an education that needs to go all the way through an organisation that is marketing's value, and it obviously starts with the marketers in the team to prove that value within their own team, and then take that narrative to whoever they need to, CFO, CEO. That's broken anyway, and a lot of the stuff that's in that report backs that up.
Yeah.
But at a fundamental level, when we talk about brand being neglected, there's so much evidence on the contrary of that as to why it should be absolutely invested in.
And the other thing is, right, if you stop doing that for, say, 3 months, you turn it off, like, let's not put any more money into brand, we need to save some money, we need to cut some costs. What if your competitor is doing it?
I mean, there's plenty of evidence of what happens when your competitors, which
We have seen a lot of this.
pandemic again.
Mm-hmm.
Like the thing is,
who are the brands that actually came on the other side of that?
we were afforded, as shit as the pandemic was. Now looking back from a marketing learnings perspective, we were afforded the perfect case study
I know.
to get us having this conversation today, where we're still talking about invest in your brand because your competitors, you can bet that at least one of your competitors will be
doing
brave,
it.
like you said, and actually go more aggressive. And what happens, when they come out of it?
The funny thing is, though, with the pandemic, like, it was so unheard of. Like, nobody had any idea what was going to happen. And we'd not been in a situation like that before. So there was no learnings. I think if that happened again, there would obviously still be a lot of businesses and a lot of brands that would dial it right down. But I actually think less.
Yeah.
I think more people would
Yeah.
see the opportunities that were actually there and available to them and jump on that more.
Yeah. I think, I mean...
I'd like to hope that people learn something from that.
Yeah. As I said, it sounds like a twisted thing to say, but it was the perfect case study for us to be here now, 5 years later, and pointing at those that pulled back and those that either held on tight, or, I love how you described it, were the brave ones and went more aggressive.
Yep.
And then look where they are in 5 years' time.
There were some brands that were literally didn't even exist pre-pandemic, and they literally took it by storm and went in all guns blazing, and it was very much all on marketing.
And I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know we've talked about examples of brands before that were right place at the right time given the circumstances.
Yep.
But it wasn't exclusively just a group of brands that were in the right place at the right time. There were some brands that just went for it.
That just carried on.
Because they thought, in uncertainty, there has to be opportunity.
Of course.
And I think that there's some stats in that report that prove that point from in fact, I'll see if I can dig it out, that I posted about something on LinkedIn earlier this week. It's not going to load. And it was ultimately about shareholder... Let me see. I've got it here. So maintaining or increasing marketing spend during tough time achieves higher shareholder returns. And then it gave the example of, or I found an example of over a 10-year period versus competitors who have obviously been gone aggressive or the opposite, over 150 percentage point difference in shareholder returns.
Christ.
Granted, but I like this. I was going to say, granted, that's over a 10-year period, which seems scary. But a 10-year period, we've just talked about the pandemic with 5 years ago.
And people and brands still haven't recovered from it.
But who is thinking, I understand it's difficult, and I understand it's difficult when shit hits the fan and you turn on BBC News and Trump's talking about these tariffs today or tomorrow. But not many people are thinking about exactly that stat I've just...
Actually, where can that position is in 10 years' time?
And what do you need to invest in for the long-term brand? Because... what you see we've talked about them before, Airbnb a few years ago pulling everything out of performance and just focusing on brand.
And look how strong they are now.
Like
they're a great example.
Yeah, like perfect example. So there are enough examples now backed with a hell of a lot of data, and a lot of it is in that report and the WARC one. We should probably include that wherever we can, because that was excellent for talking about the multiplier effect of brand with performance and vice versa. But yeah, I just think there's so many stats in there that is yet again backing marketing up fundamentally from that it's an investment and not a cost.
But I think how do you get the board, or more particularly like finance, to see it as that? Like, see the actual proper investment and not basically, how the hell do you come as a marketer? How the hell do we show our worth and convince people not to cut that budget?
I mean, fundamentally, going back to effectiveness, you need to be talking about certainly not campaign metrics, but it needs to be commercial to the tune of things like lifetime value,
and also stuff like first party data. Like, that's something you can own. Like, surely, like, as a business, you should be looking at as like a commodity, something that literally is yours, that you can't get anywhere else. And the more of that you get, the more valuable it becomes.
Yeah, and also having that first party data at your fingertips that you, as we're saying, quote unquote, own. How more accessible is your learning from that data, because it's first party data rather than third party or platform owned, which we've talked about.
And you can only really get that through brand.
Exactly that, yeah. So obviously there's loads of stuff that you can do from a brand perspective, from a first party data point of view as well. But for me, the effectiveness, there's loads, as we know, especially in digital, there's loads and loads of data and measurement that you can do, and we know it's messy. We absolutely know it's messy. But I think for me, knowing some fundamentals in your toolbox, let's call it, from a marketing perspective around effectiveness, would be things like lifetime value, customer acquisition cost, channels by channels, margin, profit margin. I mean, I don't even know if some marketers even would know, like, profit margins and things like that.
Because really, right, imagine if you looked at it in a slightly different way. And as a marketer, this is a slightly different route to look at and a slightly different goal to potentially work towards. What if your goal was not to sell more, but to sell for more? So by increasing your brand and increasing the credibility of your brand, you position yourself so that you don't actually necessarily need to make more sales, but what you can do is increase the profit margin of what you're selling.
Don't think people would think like that. Enough people. I just don't think they do.
I don't think they do.
And again, you'd almost like to think that a CFO, CEO would be banging both drums, although a CEO might be saying more volume and at a higher profit margin. So would a CFO, you would think. But I think, for me, that's where a complete neglect of brand plus this effectiveness, also neglect really from a marketing perspective, that's where the biggest, most sort of overt downfalls are at the moment in terms of that reshaping that narrative of where marketing is an investment and not a cost. That for me is two pillars of it, let's call it, and stakeholder management and communication all sort of surrounds all of that. But underinvestment in brand at quite a scale. This is in and out of uncertain times. Plus, also, that's what it is for me. Those two are the reasons why I think that marketing is still seen as a cost. And as I said, back to data, literally this morning, I've read that marketing budgets for the first time in 4 years have dropped. And it is because we're living in uncertain times and have been.
Yeah, we are. And there's a lot of backlash on what's going on. Have you seen all the stuff on TikTok with the Chinese manufacturers? You work, because you're not on TikTok.
Because I'm not on TikTok.
So it's very interesting, actually, and it plays quite nicely into this conversation. So a lot of big, both high street and higher end brands are obviously now facing these really high import tariffs when they're when a lot of their things are produced in Chinese manufacturers and Chinese factories. These factories are now coming on TikTok, telling people how much what they make and what label gets put on it, and inviting people to come and buy it directly from the factory.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting, because if you don't have a strong brand already, that could literally cripple you.
Yeah.
If you don't have that loyal audience and you don't have backing behind you, that's not a great position then to be in.
Yeah, I think good luck navigating that.
Yeah.
But, you know, everywhere you look, we've talked 5 years ago, we've talked over the last 5 years, we're talking right now with these tariffs, you've just given that example. There is very, very strong evidence for investing, thinking longer term, investing in brand being a multiplier of performance, long-term thinking actually benefiting short-term growth as well. And I just think that there's just too much mess, and has been too much mess, really. And yes, macroeconomic factors like we've talked about do play a part. But ultimately, if you think about what I keep referencing about the budgets thing, so last quarter, budgets have dropped for the first time in the last 4 years. We've also acknowledged that, yes, we're in this recovery from, say, the pandemic 5 years ago over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
But actually, we've lived through a cost of living crisis.
Oh, massive.
So there has been positive marketing budget investment in terms of growth, but yet still the most recent findings are the last quarter budgets have dropped. Yeah, the future looks positive in terms of projections, but there have been reductions in marketing budgets. And we just know for a fact from conversations, from reports like the two that we keep referencing, that there is still a problem in terms of that brand investment mindset shift, both from, and it needs to come from marketers, but for me it needs to go into the boardroom by talking about effectiveness. Holistic collective effectiveness across short-term, long-term, brand, call it performance. That for me is exactly where it needs to be.
I agree 100%. Are you ready?
This or that?
Well, it's quick fire.
All right.
It is a bit this or that, eh?
Well, that's what the thing is, isn't it?
So here's your scenario. Pressure's on. What's the smarter move? Okay. Focus on brand building or focus on short-term sales?
Going brand.
Brand, yeah. Okay. Stick to proven channels or test something new?
That's hard, that.
I'd say both.
I mean, it's definitely both, but...
Because when times are tough, actually, I'm thinking from like a socials point of view, that's when our usage of stuff changes massively, like the way the audience interact with stuff.
Yeah. But then testing something new. Risky, but could. It's, again, in uncertainty is their opportunity.
Yep.
Yes.
I think so.
I'm going to go the other one. I'm going to go new.
Yeah, I like it. Okay.
Because I'm not allowed to say both, remember?
You don't know. Chase new customers or double down on loyal ones?
I'm going to say double down on
Me
loyal
too.
ones.
When times are tough, 100%.
It's that thing of to acquire a new customer costs a hell of a lot than retaining a customer.
Yeah.
So,
whereas with leveling out and sticking with what you're doing, you can keep the customers that you've got and build loyalty.
And also, how do you build loyalty? Brand.
Brand.
And also, how do you...
Should make this one of these subliminal things, which is like brand.
Come to us and invest in brand.
You don't even have to come to us, just invest in brand.
Yeah. But come to us as well.
Okay. Keep your agency partners or bring everything in-house. I think it costs you more to bring it in-house.
Keep your agency partners.
But that's what we see, actually. We didn't mention this in the episode.
Mention it now.
But don't we? We see times get tough and people think it's easier and cheaper to have it in a house, but it's not.
No. Tools, resources, as in number of resources, depth of experience of resource, breadth of experience of resource, not just depth, breadth.
Knowledge of current environment.
I don't know.
All of it. And also you get a team of like 30 people for the price of like 2 people's wage.
Correct.
Mad. Anyway. Mass reach video ads or targeted niche campaigns. I'm saying targeted niche campaigns. That's brand.
Yeah.
We don't need mass.
Targeted niche campaigns.
Expand globally or defend your home market.
Is it when times are tough?
All of this when times are tough, yes.
I'd say defend.
Yeah, I would.
But I would, defend.
But also still, don't be naive of the opportunities that are there.
Yeah, I'd go further than defend. I'd say maximise.
Yeah.
Defend and then maximise if you have to defend whatever you're defending.
Raise blah, 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 blah. Start again.
Raise plants.
Buy a greenhouse. Raise prices or hold prices and fight for volume.
No, raise prices.
Yeah, I agree.
Raise prices.
If you've got a loyal audience and you've done brand well, you should be able to raise prices and hold them.
Yeah. You afford yourself the position to reduce sensitivity to price of your consumer.
Yeah.
If you're nailed on brand.
That's it.